members. First, I would like to invite the panel moderator, Ranjan Kumar, who is the digital transformation advocate with Akrivia. Can we welcome Ranjan with big round of applause? To join Ranjan, we have Shilpa Tickoo, who is the head HR shared services with Jubilant FoodWorks. Rita Misra, VP and HR head with Tata Realty. Roopesh Ranjan, head of HR strategic initiatives and digital transformation ITC hotels. Mussarat Hussain, head leadership and HR transformation Maruti Suzuki India Limited. Mridul Chandra, senior director HR with Tata Communication. Adil Nargolwala, corporate SVP and HR with WNS Global. And to join them, we also have Ruchi Pant, director HR with Indigo Aviations. On that note, all to you, Ranjan, for your panel discussion, please.
Thank you so panel with so many experts. It's like being in a Shark Tank. Thank you so much for being here, and in the interest of time, again, I'll keep myself to the minimum. And while we understand, such a huge gathering of leaders at this event, it's understood that we understand the impact of analytics and that automating HR is key to business growth. And we also understand it's an imperative now, and how it expands the potential and expectations of analytics. So my first question would be to Shilpa. Shilpa, how, to set the context with your given experience, how and why automating HR would actually help business?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Let me think, okay. I think the journey HR Tech has taken in last 20 years has already answered this question long back. But in case anybody has any doubts, I can just elaborate on that. I think there is a different question on table right now, which is how do we find right solution for the needs which we have in today's world in terms of integration, stability, agility, and the current changing world, as we call it, in the new COVID atmosphere. The world has already moved on from pre-HR tech scenarios where we had systems which were simply just taking care of the business and nothing was taking care of the HR part of it. And the priorities, in fact, the HR IT has actually helped us prioritize HR in a different fashion. We moved on from just managing or doing the basic administrative work in HR part to actually managing human resource management with the depth of the topic which it has. If you actually look at it, the world has already moved on, the government has moved on, the kind of things which you need to do. We no longer paper-based setup. Organizations have already started saying no to paper. IT Act says that it's all admissible now if you actually say, yes, I agree with terms and conditions, or I accept the offer. Appointment letter can be signed if actually somebody just does a digital signature. We moved on to a world which is all digital. And it is rightly so expected that as a business, the HR function also upskills itself and reaches that stage where we actually can move on to that. And that is most important for most of the organization now. If I actually talk about the current needs, I'm coming from an organization which is food-based industry. A large portion of it is gig workforce. A large portion of it needs to be tracked in terms of attendance, workforce management. And you can't do this kind of numbers. We're talking about 40,000, 50,000, maybe even scalable going to 70, 80. Now, given that, you can't manage that kind of workforce with the manual way of doing things. You have to have intelligent, automated solution, maybe having geotagging to actually find out where people are so that they can do attendance at limited space within a setup or a location where you would want him to be present for a particular day. So the world has moved on, and that is why all of these things are required for us to take HR to the next level, make sure the organizations are matching up to the things. I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shilpa. I would request Rita to add to this and help us understand how can one simplify and streamline HR administrative tasks and the impact of that.
So, very good evening to everyone. I think in terms of streamlining administrative tasks, most of our platforms, we spoke about SAP, we spoke about Workday, Oracle, and now we have this product which is being launched over here. I think any platform does simplify your administrative processes in HR. The one thing that HR heads before deploying technology need to think about is what is the user interface, and there are obviously within HR or within businesses 3 basic user interfaces. One is the employee, the other is the manager, and the third is the HR team itself, right? And look at fundamentally why we are using technology and what does technology serve us for. Initially when maybe a couple of years or maybe a decade, like you might have said, a decade ago when we were looking at different technologies, we talked about how do we eliminate inefficiencies in the system, which could be a result of manual processing of your payroll or your leave and attendance. There were very basic systems. I think that doesn't exist anymore. And now we need to look at how are we going to enhance experiences for our users, which is essentially those 3 categories that I spoke about. How are we going to use technology to enhance capability within organizations? And that's where, as HR heads, as core HR teams, we have to make that choice between how much of technology we want to deploy, because the IT will keep throwing technology at us, saying this is a great tool, this has this capability, that has that capability. But how much are we going to deploy technology, and what is the purpose it fulfills? At the end of the day, in the past 2 years post-pandemic, it seems as if employees are exhausted with the amount of technology that has been thrown at them. And that social capital that was there in organizations is eroded to a very large extent because of various type of realities that employees have been faced with. So I think the focus has to be on integration, something as simple as a single sign-on for all our digital tools, basic integration issues and enhancement issues are where our focus needs to be. I think it's passé to say that administrative tasks can be simplified with technology. I think that's a given, and I don't think there's any organization out there who does paper-based transactions anymore. I hope I've been able to answer that question.
Thank you so much, Rita. Now, while we discuss about, while we dive into the power of harnessing the HCM technology for automating HR processes, Roopesh, with your given extensive experience, and your in-depth understanding of the, business and clubbed with your business acumen and your leadership, I would want you to help us understand how we can minimize cost and enhance security.
Hi, good evening everyone. I represent ITC. So just to give you a parallel to what he's asking, I think our business, if I look at from a customer perspective and employee perspective, we have a customer from a farmer to a scientist, from an employee, the same magnitude from a farmer to a scientist. So technology, when we adopted long back, when I go back to the HCM maturity model, maybe I refer back to Joe's version model, when we all know that we got an award for each opal where we reach out to the farmers and actually we sort of integrated their model into us, and they're able to start selling us one-to-one basis without having any intermediaries. So that's the journey ITC has started long ago. Of course, like someone was telling in the panel, each model and each technology has its own touch points. And the way I look at it from a cost perspective, I'll give you an example of a couple of products. For example, Innovation Portal in our ITC has developed 6 unique products as actually currently the market leader. It all came from employees. It's just be an Engage pocket spray. It can be a Fable chocolate. It can be many other products. So it's all came from Innovation Portal, which we actually launched long ago, and every year we sort of encourage everyone to do that. And if you look at it from that perspective, one of the person which you given us the idea is actually was not a technological person. So what I'm trying to say is that it's inbuilt into the system for very long. At like very disruptive world like this, when we are actually running behind the technology, I think we look at its sustainability too, how, what, and where it has been catering to, whether it has been addressing to the agility, whether it is addressing to the organizational needs. So we say, internally say, that every time is saved money, every efficiency is actually costing us money, every business solutions are actually giving us money. Right recruitment is also money. So rather than actually looking at from a headcount perspective and how we can be able to become more agile, we look at opposite, how we can enhance the business, how we enhance the customer satisfaction through digital technology. So that's the way we look at it. More importantly, from an organization perspective, having such a diverse business of almost 54 brands running across India and one of the largest conglomerate, we look at compliances. That's the second part of the question. It's extremely critical in each business when we operate and where we sit. We need to ensure that the business runs and we sort of run business responsibly. So it's a huge investment behind that. And I think everybody who coming to the system understand that compliances, and it's impossible to actually take them through an orientation session to ensure that we sort of run a business in Guntur and put a compliances manager and run the business in Guntur effectively. It may not be a possible scenario. So this space in technology from a data security point of view, from a compliances perspective, from a governance point of view, we came long way. So I think this model, when I was looking at it, I was resonating myself saying that this works really well because it's been a blended model. It's been integrated many systems into one. And I think, again, I couldn't speak in the forum, but I say I congratulate them for such a nice product and wishing them all the best.
Thank you so much, Roopesh. Adil, I hope you will agree, and most of us would agree that in automating processes, the shift that actually we're making is from our trivial, repetitive tasks to focus more on the vital corporate functions. So I would want you to help us understand how we can connect this to increase automation to increasing our productivity, employee productivity.
Okay, so the first step of any HR is hiring. Okay. We all know some years ago, there was a situations column in newspapers. You know, people gave an advertisement. Somebody read that advertisement, sent his resume in an envelope, posted it, you got it, you know, to your office. Somebody went through it, contacted the person. You know, there was a process which took many days. Now it happens in few, not even, I would say, half a day, less than that, you know, in a few hours. So starting from there is where automation has taken over. Today you can publish a job through a tool like Akrivia or so many other tools that have been mentioned and instantly get hundreds of applications. Instantly, your artificial intelligence the tool kicks in, sieves those applications and tries to do a match. And you can set a percentage to match. You can say, for example, a 70% match or an 80% match or even a 100% match. It searches for certain words in a person's CV, matches it, and gives you an output. So suddenly a computer is telling you, you received, say, 500 applications, and 30 are relevant. So that huge task of going through 500 CVs gets reduced by an automated tool and churns out 30 CVs. In the olden days, you would have had to maybe have a dozen people go through 500, you know, resumes to come and choose 30. Here, somebody on a computer, a tool has done it for you instantly. So that's one way of looking. We talked about learning. For example, learning. For a large organization, how do you send out learning modules so that people sitting wherever they are? Nowadays, we are working from home. There's a gig workforce. There are many youngsters. Okay, a lot of people won't even see office for months because they're working in a hybrid format. For all these people, a tool can easily push learning. They can learn virtually, they can get certified virtually. That will help them grow in the organization. You can incentivize employees based on the certifications, etc., that they pick up, you know, through the tool. So I can give many examples, okay, where an automated tool can really take away repetitive tasks, not all tasks. There will be quite a few tasks still left where a human being is involved in taking that final decision. Okay, so like I said, if 30 CVs get through the system, I still believe that the final authority to choose the right person, the right fit for that job, will be the operating manager or the hiring manager of that role. I don't still believe, unless it's really mass, I mean, some people mentioned blue collar workforce, etc. Okay, where you're hiring, somebody said drivers, for example. Now, maybe you don't need to meet every driver when you hire, but there may be a test that you will do. You will make a person drive a vehicle to realize how good he is. Can a tool do that? I don't know yet. I don't think we've reached that stage yet, where we can trust somebody just by, having a computer test him for a drive. So I think there are lots of places where a tool can fit in and can take over mundane tasks or repetitive tasks or tasks that involve a whole amount of human interaction, and let the human beings do what is really required. Their time is well spent on actually giving the final output rather than going through the whole shaft.
Thank you so much, Adil. Mridul, my next question to you, since Adil made a mention of recruitment, and yes, we also are talking a lot about the influence of the impact of analytics on the attrition rates. So I would want you to speak about how data is influencing the hiring strategies.
Thank you for that question. Good evening, everyone. I represent Tata Communication, which is a digital ecosystem enabler. I believe all HCM tools are there to enable HR functions efficiency, but it cannot replace human touch. That's something which is very, very important to remember. Now, coming to recruitment, in fact, I cannot talk about recruitment without highlighting attrition as a problem that's going across businesses right now. So all of us are facing the same challenge, and we are trying our level best to address it in various ways. There are multiple tools, multiple processes which has been deployed at every stage of recruitment, and we get enough and more data. Recruitment as a function is one of the first function which has adopted automation in a big way, not just from sourcing CV, but to scale up operations. There are multiple organizations who have done this at various stages. I remember working for Wipro about 20 years back when we had a fantastic system called Synergy, which used to integrate end-to-end recruitment process. And it used to generate huge amount of data. But what was lacking, I think, in most of this system is, A, the analytics that needs to be used effectively for decision-making using the recruitment data. Secondly, the integration of multiple tools which have been deployed across functions, processes, to ensure that data flows rightly at the right stakeholder for decision-making. Now, let me take a few examples of what we can do with analytics in recruitment. So when the candidate goes through a process, various stages of recruitment, there is enough data that gets generated with respect to their skill, their competence, their past project, their assessment, and so on and so forth. When we hire somebody, we actually look at their fitment into one single role, but the data that gets generated in the process somewhere get missed out. We don't actually store it, analyze it, and process it later for career progression. So that's one application of recruitment data that could very well benefit the organization in terms of looking at how we actually progress the career of an individual. But that's one part of the story. The other part, actually, when you assess candidate for a role, it's not just one candidate who is being assessed. There are multiple candidates who is being assessed, and they all have qualified the job description basis which they have reached a stage of interview. So obviously there is a fitment, and we have enough data for that particular candidate from a skill assessment, again, competence, everything else, which gets missed out completely. That candidate's data, if it is processed, analyzed, and stored, and channelized to the right stakeholder in the organization, it could also lead to reduction in cycle time of recruitment. We could actually see a fitment for that candidate. we can actually do a lot of proactive hiring using that data, in the sense that if there is a gap that has been identified, can we Uberize our own training, learning and development program, offer something to that candidate to scale up, and later on consider that candidate. Similarly, internally, we have a lot of data when somebody is being processed for IGP. We select somebody, and we actually don't look at what are the strengths, weaknesses, and the reason for us to select that candidate. Can we actually develop further based on the data that is coming? So there are various analytics that could be used to ensure that the recruitment process is much more proactive and predictive. So today's challenge of attrition can be managed if you are in a position to use this data to actually predict attrition in a much more scientific way, and then look at how do we consider candidates, both internal and external, to compare their capability and ensure faster hiring. So that's the point that I wanted to make today.
Thank you so much, Mridul. And since we are talking about the impact of data on hiring strategies, I would like to take this question forward with Mussarat. So my question would be like, what would be the impact of, given your experience of such a huge, massive experience, what would be the impact of data on understanding the aspirations of an employee, workforce aspirations?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So data, it plays a big role. Let me tell you, I'll give you from my own experiences. One of the, for employee aspiration, one of the data which is coming it through the pulse survey or engagement survey. Now that is a kind of a diagnostic and a good tool in the hands of HR and the top management to actually regulate their practices, their policies, they understand the pain point of people. What is actually making them happy or what is making them mad? And this is a good opportunity if it is done on a periodic cycle. And this is something which is what I feel has given leverage to many organizations in terms of opportunity to, put something in the perspective which is seen by the people rather than, it is only driven by the organization. So employees' voice is very important, and this is something which is very important, how to consume the data that you are getting, what policy changes or what relevant changes you are trying to do, those analytics will help. And what I have seen is that, you can't solve everything. So you can do a Pareto analysis and understand which are the top 3 pain points and start working on it. You cannot change everything. So companies have to do that. That is one, to ensure the aspirations of the people. But what I have seen during this pandemic, we created an app because our people are spread all over the country, an app called Wellness Mitra, which was also integrated to Arogya Setu, in which every day in the morning people have to, when they were working from home, they have to fill certain data, and it was giving us a heat map of what's happening in the entire ecosystem, including our value chain, what is happening where we are having problems, and even in the families. So that is such a beautiful integrated system which was created. So we could understand, where is the need coming in, which area or which place we are having more issues or concerns. So that actually helped us reach out to the right people at the right time. And this tool was so much data driven and being analyzed on a daily basis, morning, afternoon, evening. You can imagine that, the kind of win-win it created. It is something which is all coming out of data only. Now, one or two more quick points I would like to add. Again, my experience, since I represent Maruti, which is a typical hardcore manufacturing and a large manufacturing, and we were always 6-day working company, always. And I remember the young generation started talking about work-life balance and things like that. And in various forum and platform they would talk. But in the engagement survey, one of the big gap started coming was basically the work-life balance or in the culture part. And companies started, thinking on it that let us study, let us benchmark. But typically, if you look at the Japanese companies, especially in India, they are all 6 day or a 5.5 day. And you won't believe that the data that we were getting out of the, pulse surveys or dipstick or, exit interview or stay interview, it was all talking about that. And it was number one priority. And it took us a couple of years, but from 2015 onward, we were able to convert that. So this only happened because the aspiration of people were coming in some form of data. And data will not lie, right? So this is another, I can go on, but two more examples quickly I would like to give. Say for example, we do a lot of, assessments, and these are all data driven online. And these are based on various competencies and all. The data and analytics that we are getting also gives us a kind of analysis about the organization, that which band, which level, which function, which division, where is the strength and where is the weakness. And that helps us in actually focusing in the right place, because the diagnosis is right, then your therapy will be correct. Otherwise it will be a kind of a blind that you are doing, okay, this will work, let us do this. So this helps us in segmenting and understanding that where is the real problem and where we should tackle. So data, if it is analyzed very correctly and the voice of people is heard, I think it helps a lot. And again, last which I would like to add, again, take a simple training, for example. Now you are doing a hybrid mode. Earlier it used to be classroom. But when you talk about data, pre, post kind of a thing and all, that is what is data. And people will talk about that program, the content, the pedagogy, the trainer, all this will reflect. And if it is compiled, then you will understand that what kind of changes are required, where you need to change the content, or you need to improve or change the pedagogy itself. What is the actual need of the people, you will understand. So all this actually helps in creating engagement and creating the fulfilling the needs and demand of the people, which is actually required, rather than thinking that what I am doing is correct, what company is doing is correct. So we have to hear the voice of the people, and this will come out of data only. So this is what comes to my mind.
Thank you so much, Mussarat. Since you spoke about pain points, I would like to take this next question to Ruchi. The last question. Ruchi, what are the pain points the HR leaders would have to focus on in order to translate this data into actionable insights?
Thank you, Ranjan. All very relevant and interesting questions. Hello, everyone. Good evening. So top of mind challenges that I can think of. The first one is obvious one, the integration that some of us have already spoken about. To convert any data into actions, our different data inputs need to talk to each other. For example, the biggest challenge, like you spoke about, Mridul, is attrition right now. And we have so much data on pulse surveys. Organizations have moved from annual and quarterly surveys to weekly and fortnightly surveys. There's nothing that is not there. But are all of our attrition inputs talking to our surveys? Do we have the predictive analytics there? Probably not. So that is, the kind of integration that we will need where, before we can actually convert any of this data into actionables. Another example I can quote is, hiring data talking to talent management. Like every time I open a position, I have so much data in my talent management portal about people who will be ready for that role in 0 to 6 months. But can I access that data every time I open that position? Maybe not. So how do we have this kind of integration where these portals are talking to each other? So the first and foremost is that. Second is, how do we keep it simple? And I think, Rita, you spoke beautifully about that. How do we keep it simple yet effective? And I'm going to quote George Westerman, the big data guy and digital transformation guy, that when you do the digital transformation right, It's like a caterpillar converting into a butterfly. But when you don't get it right, all you have is a really fast caterpillar. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we need to solve for. How do we keep avoiding that situation? How do we keep employee experience at the center of everything? Like most of the organizations are obsessed about customer experience. As HR leaders, one of the biggest challenge and problem that we're looking at is the employee experience. How do our application tracking systems that Adil spoke about, how do they convert into candidate experience systems? How do we constantly have simple, effective systems where somebody doesn't need to wait for half an hour to apply for a leave, right? So second challenge that we're looking at. Third, and probably the most important one that I could think of is, how do we constantly upskill people? Right now, I think Shilpa spoke about it, that people are exhausted with so much of data available, right? And how do we constantly upskill our people managers and HR team members who are going to actually convert that data into actionables to actually interpret their data? Now, a lot of bandwidth is still going in reading that data and interpreting that data. Once we have it at a click of a button with the kind of softwares we are talking about, the kind of tools that are coming in, how do we have people who are upskilled to read that data and convert that into actionables? Are we constantly upskilling people? Both are people managers and HR team members who are going to read that data. So those are some of the challenges that I could think of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruchi, with such a good interaction that leaders had with Rahul. I think we had many of the questions answered, and our product answers most of the questions, and probably we will still be available to answer the rest of the questions as well. Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you, Mridul. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Shilpa, Mussarat, Roopesh, and Adil. Thanks for being here and for your insights that you shared. And probably we can have one or two questions if are there. I'll open the floor for Q&A.
Good evening, everyone. Wonderful product, Akrivia Visa, and also wonderful panel discussions we had just now. I have a question on ESG, environmental social governance. So far, we are only looking at the CSR externally, external customers, and also society at large. But today, with the ESG in place, where the employees, the internal customers, are to be taken care of in terms of wellness as well as career or the growth or diversity, equity, inclusion policy, etc. And what is your take on ESG and how this automation is going to take it to next level when you're going to, as an organization, we have to fill BR, SR report, business responsibility, social responsibility, and also look at employees at a larger scale because the internal customers, employees have to be taken care in an organization.
It's not clear.
I can't make out the whole question.
Yeah.
I just heard the ESG part, but not the whole question.
I think I heard.
Yeah, please.
I didn't hear you very clearly, so I'm going to break this up in parts and then ask you the question, ask you to repeat yourself.
Yeah.
Your first part that I got was, how is, with this new push across the globe, I would say, on ESG, how is automation going to help us, right? Now, there are, in my head, a couple of, and my understanding of ESG, there are three aspects of it. One is, of course, the environment. The second part is the social piece, and the third part is the governance piece. And these are very linked to business outcomes. How does automation help? And if you look at India and the way our laws are, very clearly we have, if you're a profitable organization, 2% has to go into your corporate social responsibility or ESG piece, right? And how you're going to, so if you look at the environment, then there are aspects of climate change, aspects of, how you're going to save the planet. And if you look at all global organizations, the focus is very much on people, profits, and planet. That's the fundamental of any good, large, scalable organization. In today's date, business also, you will get more business, you will get more employees, more profits if you're focused on ESG. Automation helps in various ways. One, you can look at carbon emissions. If I speak specifically around governance piece and the environment piece, which is E and G, part of your ESG. The amount of carbon emissions your business is contributing to and how it's managing that is a key imperative. How well are your people trained? And if I look at it from an HR angle, it becomes our responsibility to ensure training. And governance aspect is, are you reporting that out in your annual report on saying number of people trained on ESG, number of, and you look at the social aspect, number of volunteering hours, and where is that volunteering also happening? So these are few ways, and you definitely now need to focus on, or your HR systems also need to focus on, the reporting aspect, because globally now there are certain certifications and protocols that all organizations have to follow. So that governance piece then comes in terms of percentage of diversity you're hiring, for example, carbon emissions and how you're managing that, how are you training for ESG, number of training hours, blue collared, white collared. So there are various permutations and combinations, but it's increasingly becoming imperative for organizations to understand that they will get more business if they are focusing on this and prepare right now. We spoke about future of work, future of HR, future of various aspects, but the future with the pandemic is right now. So we have to prepare fast if we are going to meet the protocols and for businesses to survive and grow. I hope I've been able to answer that question.
Yes, ma'am, but Akrivia, because we are doing enterprise HR integration, I think as a responsible citizen, we need to include ESG also in the automation piece, because it's not only material, capex plus labor, which is converting into the profit. End of the day, the water, air, and the land we live, and the humanity race all together needs to be taken care. So automation, while we are doing automation, as HR professionals, we are sitting here, we need to understand these aspects of the society in which we live, what we do for water system around us, where we work, and also air as well as land, and also humanity at large.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't hear all of your comments, but you're absolutely right on the comment that for an organization to go into the future, if they're only focused on profits and not on people and planet, then they're not going to exist in the future, that's for sure. And there are very clear guidelines on how to proceed further. I'm not the expert, but there are many experts in the industry who can talk more about it.
Yeah, ITC does a lot of BR, you mentioned, so we can hear from ITCs.
Sir, one last answer and then.
No, I think since that he mentioned, firstly, your question was not very clear, but what I understood is that you're asking from another angle, saying that how we integrate into the system, right? So just to say an example from an ITC perspective, we sort of pull the data from all the sources, like what are the parameters, which some of them are touched upon, and we maintain a central database to report this back. But having said that, your question was not so clear. I'm only talking from an integration perspective, how many other systems integrate and pull the data and then generate a report so that we can report back from a compliance and governance perspective.
I'll give you a simple example. So firstly, ESG is a different function in most companies. It's not part of HR, okay? It falls under a very different set of people, and the goal of that team is basically to make the company as environmentally friendly and clean as possible, because it impacts shareholders, okay, in every sense. When I mean stakeholders, I mean customers, I mean investors, okay, because everybody looks at your scores and how you are, treating your planet in the right way. But I can give you a very simple example, which I've come across. You see, in any large company, at any given moment of time, a few hundred people are taking a flight and going somewhere or the other. Okay. Through the pandemic, because at that time there was lockdown and there were no airline flying and anything, business still continued. And a lot of companies actually grew. They grew phenomenally, during that time of COVID, without going anywhere. All business was happening basically using technology. Now companies are seeing data and analyzing people flying versus the earlier time when people were working through Zoom or any other tool to hold meetings with customers, internal meetings, etc. And realizing how much of actual travel is required and how much is not. Now that is something that an ESG team will look at, is purposeful, how many people really needed to take a flight and go somewhere, how much of that could have been done using a tool technologically, same outcomes, and get better, you can say save money, be more friendly towards the planet by being more economic, more environmentally friendly, things like that. So there are things like that, but that's very different from HR, and it's nothing to do with the tool that Rahul has just launched about half an hour or 45 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adil.
thank
And given the time constraint, I assure you experts are going to be here for a while and we can have a lot of discussion during the networking. Thank you so much. I thank the leaders here. I thank my leaders here, expert team here. Thank you so much for being here.